Okay, what's
Yeah,
up, guys? Today we're going to be talking to the lovely Dr. Peck about mental health, to tie it into our initiative about really just improving the well being of students around North Carolina. So, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
sure. So I am born and raised in New York State, um, and have a license up in New York that I have had since 2006. Moved down to Charlotte, and my license in Charlotte or in North Carolina has been 2008. And then I also recently, since the pandemic, joined Pack, which is an interjurisdictional entity that allows uh, cross-state boundaries for practice for telepsychology. So besides those New York and North Carolina, I'm also licensed to do telepsychology in 27 other states. So I'm in private practice. My office is in South Park, and I mainly work from an acceptance and commitment therapy modality, their framework. It's heavily based in mindfulness, values, and compassion. So
That's awesome. So, do you work with a lot of teenagers?
I used to a lot, and just how the aging of my own child is I've started to age up. So I do see, I do have some adolescents. I keep space for some in my practice. The majority I'm currently seeing is adults, but there was a time where that was very different. I saw a lot of adolescents in my practice.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So I know
Mhm.
with like finals and midterms going on right now, a lot of students are feeling like a lot of stress and like anxiety about that. So how would you recommend like dealing with immense stress, like thought processes or strategies that we can use?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep all of this pretty short. I feel like I could talk on this probably for days, uh, but really briefly, mindset. So not thinking about stress as a bad thing, but almost really looking at it as a way to that your body's trying to mobilize you to for action. And so what we do know, Kelly McGonigal and other researchers have found that it's not necessarily stress is not necessarily bad. It's how we relate to it. And so what we can do is kind of lop off the being stressed about being stressed and just notice, okay, here's stress. And then think about it as, yay, this is my body really mobilizing and activating so I can get all my stuff done. That would be one of the key, like, brief points, is looking at it as noticing it, naming it, and just sort of like, okay, cool, it's here, and this is my body's way of getting stuff done. Versus often we tend to get stressed about being stressed, and then we're anxious, and then we're anxious about being anxious, and then we're immobilized, which is unhelpful, or we're frantic, unhelpful. Yeah, so if we can sort of be with the discomfort but see it as a helpful tool, that can be really helpful. And mitigating that with moving our bodies in whatever way feels good, whether it's dancing or karate or running or walking or yoga or whatever it might be, but moving our bodies in ways that feels good so that we can kind of get some of the funk out.
Yeah, I know sometimes like I definitely get stressed about being stressed. Just how you said it. It's like, oh my God, I'm stressed. And yeah,
Ah,
that's really
yeah,
funny. Um,
yeah,
so I know sometimes like when I'm really stressed, that can lead to just me being totally like overwhelmed and just not being able to do
mhm.
anything. And I know like a lot of people think of it as kind of like an academic or like personal burnout. And so like what does that mean? And just is there like any way you'd recommend dealing with that?
Yeah. And I don't know the proper definition of burnout. But what I think of burnout is our tank gets depleted and nothing's coming back in, right? So thinking about, okay, how do we refill our tank and replenish in ways that are small and manageable, right? So we're not getting overwhelmed about the things we have to do to sort of not feel overwhelmed. But it would be really noticing and really checking in on a more regular basis. Sometimes I think we're feeling like overwhelmed and burned out, but that was a long time coming. And we're not checking in more regularly with ourselves or doing things on a regular basis to kind of keep filling our buckets. So I think, again, movement for adolescents, I say prioritize sleep, but that's just really hard for many to do. We can talk probably days on days on days on sleep alone. But filling in time for fun, for downtime, and it's often also helpful for that burnout. Again, checking in. I kind of think about it as temperature checks, right? Like, especially through the pandemic, we've talked about temperature checks all the time, but instead of like our body temperature, but like here, like our body temperature, like where am I at? And what do I need? And oftentimes it might be helpful to prioritize and to organize. That helps us not feel so overwhelmed, which can tend to lead to this frantic, frothy, foamy sort of, which then just depletes our battery even quicker.
Yeah, I know I've definitely felt that, like, especially last year doing online school. Sometimes I was just like, I can't do anything else right now. The world's ending because I missed one of my little Canvas assignments, but, you know, stuff happens. So that's
Yeah,
really helpful
yeah,
advice. I like that about like prioritizing sleep and stuff because I know sometimes I have to force myself to do that. It's like if
yeah,
I don't go to sleep right now, tomorrow's gonna be worse because I'll be tired and then I'll just keep like snowballing and so that's
yeah,
definitely good advice. So another thing that I've read a lot online about people like my age experiencing is kind of feeling like they're unworthy of like the things they've earned or like academic or athletic achievements. And so how would you recommend that like overcoming that feeling of being unworthy and really just embracing that like you are, where you're meant to be and you're who you're supposed to be?
yeah. So I think one is, again, that awareness and recognition of, oh, here's my mind saying, right? It's the not good enough story, right? The NGE. Ah, okay, yeah. And our minds are hardwired to look at what's wrong in our environment. It's allowed us to remain a species. That negativity bias, what's not good enough, what's not right. And so offsetting that with, well, what is? What did I accomplish today in a small way? What am I doing? And I really love what's called the GLAD practice. I believe Rick Hansen, I heard it from him first, but I can't remember exactly where I've got it, but some other psychologist somewhere. And the G is grateful. So what's one small thing I'm grateful for? The L is learn. What's one small thing I've learned about myself, about someone else, about the world, tidbit of fact. The A is accomplished. What's one small thing I've accomplished today? And then the D is delight. What's one small thing I have found delight in today? So what we know, if we can really practice that on a daily basis, whether that's writing it down or just reviewing it at the end of the day, that will often then start to sort of like, we'll stop and like look at the sunset and be like, whoa, that's amazing. And then, okay, and this is a moment of delight. And how do I soak this in? Or, oh, wow, I accomplished this to-do task. Oh, this is my A for the day. And how do I soak this in? Oh, I'm so proud. I set this off, I did this today and that feels really good, and soak that in. So offsetting some of that negativity bias, that not good enough story, the, imposter syndrome, what all of those things, one is noticing, okay, my mind is saying, or okay, here's the not good enough story. So naming it, right? And not buying into it. Sort of the moment we can name it, we're not it, right? I sort of say, like, if I can see the cup, I'm not the cup. So if I can see the thought, if I can see the story, my mind telling me I'm not in it right now. And then offsetting that with a regular, whether it's that glad practice or some other acknowledgement of like, okay, and me as a human in this moment, I'm doing this, or I can feel, I'm noticing that.
I love that. So glad, G for grateful, L for learn, A for accomplish, and D for delight. That's a great way to frame it. And I know personally, like, I think I'm gonna start writing that down because that's definitely
You
like be able
should.
to flip back and look at it like, okay, like look at what I've accomplished, I've learned. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
again,
And
that
there's
like
always something small. Like, again, we're looking at those, trying to pull out those small things and just soak those in. Because usually our brain just floats right by them and has no recognition of it. It's only clicking into the stuff that's not good enough, or what we didn't do.
and I love that analogy about like you see the cup, like you're not the cup. Like if you can recognize that you're just like coming up with a narrative and like that's just your brain telling you things and that's not what like you're actually performing as. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Yay.
Um okay. Would you recommend anything to incorporate into a daily routine to help with improving your mental health or just your state of well-being?
Yeah. And sort of going to be basically reviewing sort of what we've already talked about. One is movement. Move your bodies in some way. There's so many brain structures that we need movement. We're hardwired for movement. And if we're not getting it in some way, it really does muck up things. So again, and it doesn't have to be an hour, Orange Theory class. It can be, 10-minute walk. It can be, a yoga with Adrienne on YouTube for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. It could be, a dance party in your kitchen. It could be, joining a sports team or going on a hike, whatever way sort of feels good to you. So moving your body, connecting. You need to connect with other humans, utmost important. Again, and that can mean it's not necessarily the number of connections, but the quality. What we know is if we have one good connection, that can mitigate a ton of like mental and physical health. So whether it's a parent, a sibling, a friend, for many people it's a pet, you know, so that connection, some sort of downtime. So not go all the time, whether that downtime is reading or meditation or walking in nature, or something that allows just sort of that kind of coming down a minute or two versus like this like go right. Some fun and enjoyment. And some of these can be sort of, you can hit two birds with one stone sometimes. Like if you really love hiking, your fun and enjoyment can also be your movement. Or if you really love connecting with other humans and you get really recharged by that, then meeting with a friend for some coffee or something can be both. So that fun and enjoyment piece, and the gratitude, whether it's the glad practice or a gratitude journal, or just acknowledging it in your own head of what is right, what whether it's something you've accomplished, what you're thankful or grateful for. And sleep. I mean, sleep underpins our health, our mental health, our well-being in so many ways. So as much as we can prioritize sleep, and again, talking in like very small ways. So if your sleep is really kind of wonky, not being like, okay, I'm going to go to bed 2 hours earlier, just start with like 10 or 15 minutes. I always think of the analogy of if you were in a ship and you were, your course was here, and the person just changed the trajectory just a degree or two. In the first little bit, not a big difference, but over a long period of time, there'd be a huge difference in where you would end up. And so thinking about that for all of these, you don't have to do all of them all at once, but just pick one if you're not doing one of them and say, okay, I'm going to, prioritize sleep and I'm going to get up, the same time every day. Great. Or I'm going to go to bed 15 minutes earlier, or I'm going to incorporate movement for 10 minutes, starting slow so that it is very, it's specific, it's measurable, kind of a SMART goal. I don't know if specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. So something small that you can bang out on a regular basis, and then you can just tweak and add from there.
Awesome. Those are all really good. That's great advice. And I love the part about like finding something like fun in your day, because sometimes it's easy to be like, well, I could like, watch TV and like, enjoy that, or I could finish this assignment a day early or stuff like that. So I really like that piece about like kind of forcing yourself to unwind and relax. That's
Yeah.
great. So my last question is, what advice would you give, oh, you kinda just did that, but, kind of in addition to that, like, who would you recommend see, like, a therapist or go to therapy? Like, anybody or just people with, like, more severe, like, disorders or that feel like they need it?
I would say, I mean, like I might have a different opinion than some, but I would say I don't think you'd want to wait until it's like to the point where it's unmanageable, or it's becoming like really interfering with functioning in life. I think it's a really great way to um, talk to someone that is an unbiased support, and listener. Um, so even if you have close relationships with friends and family, but you're finding that things, your mind sort of gets stuck on something, or there's you're noticing, not just stress, but there's just not really sure how to manage it, or anxiety, you're kind of feeling down or blue. So I would say, if you ever have a thought of like, gosh, I really would love someone to talk to, or oh gosh, I'm telling my friends the same thing over and over, and I don't want to interrupt our relationship, but it's just I really need someone to hear me. To me, like, just go on Psychology Today, or if you tell a parent or a friend and see if they have a recommendation. But I would say, the sooner the better to talk to someone.
That's definitely different than I was expecting. Thank you so much for that. And thank you again for just answering all these questions and kind of helping us like reframe our mindset regarding mental health and just general wellness, especially like during a pandemic and stuff. It's important to take care of yourself and think of yourself like in the same way you might have thought about school or like serving others before. It's really important to take care of yourselves these days. And that doesn't mean, neglecting other people, but definitely just finding a sense of self-worth and stuff. So, thank you so much for all of that, Dr. Peck.